So I guess I can talk about the landscaping and lighting district election circus. That's what I called it. It was a fun deal. There I was around Christmas time when the city deposited a lump of coal in my mailbox. Said a ballot was on the way. Actually, the way I really heard it is it was in Rick's mailbox first. He called me and said, "Have you got this one yet?" I went, "No." Well, I got it the next day. And it was to raise my lighting district assessment. And it did come up with a lot of convoluted, confusing information. And one of the things that I didn't understand was why it talked about landscape maintenance district. And by the way, I didn't put it in this presentation, but we received different ballots. They all didn't look alike, depending upon where you were. And my information didn't include if your property is subject to LMD cost, you would be voting on reducing your LMD as well. And it was all in a process that didn't make sense. But what it was doing was it was trying, in my estimation, it was trying to fix the election. So they were claiming I saw some ballots from the people that were in LMDs that were going to get a reduction. And then they're saying, well, you know what, we're going to offset the increase that you're getting in the lighting district by the reductions that you're getting in the in your landscape maintenance district. And that's just a way to influence the election. By the way, this all looks exactly like, well, not exactly, it was a little different, when the large 2008-1 median district was formed. And when they did that, Mr. Polskamp came up with this idea that he would dissolve all the existing LMDs in the district and then reform them, and everybody got to vote on them. And it probably was an illegal move as well. We didn't understand stuff as well during that time, but we did this time, so we immediately started to complain. So I just want everybody to realize we are a general law city. And as I said before earlier in the meeting, a general law city cannot increase taxes. They can't put a tax on anything. They can't raise the taxes. They can't do any of that. And that's part of the issue that we're going to talk about in the lighting district as well. Now, if they decide to become instead of a general law city, they decided to change and become a city where you generate your own rules and stuff, well, maybe they can do that. But today they can't. So instead, the way the city of Santa Clarita raises money is they have assessments that are levied against Proposition 218. And Proposition 218, called the Right to Vote on Taxes Act, permits the city to turn around and establish certain projects or services that provide a special benefit to property, and then charge for it. So if it's a general benefit, it's a benefit for everybody in the city. For people, it can't be a special benefit district. It has to be a special benefit for property. And then those things are established by a vote of the affected property owners, not poll voters, property owners. And so it's a different scenario. And in actuality, it's not bad. It turns around and says, you know what, I'll give you a good example. It says if you're in a gated community and you have a homeowners association and you have a whole bunch of landscaping to maintain, well, you can set that up as a district. And you can then charge for it. And it makes sense. But some of the things make a little less sense. Today, in a Proposition 218 assessment district, you can include automatic cost escalators. So any district that was formed in the city after that took place, they would put in some kind of an escalator. In the Open Space and Parkland Preservation District, there is an escalator of $1 a year. In others, like in a lot of the LMDs, there's escalators that say you can raise it each year per the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. But that doesn't mean that's what you have to charge. That's the maximum assessment. So if, like, for example, there's an assessment of a maximum assessment set for one of our lighting districts, it's $81. That is the maximum. They don't have to charge that. They could charge less if they didn't need the money. And all the money within a district, we were continually told, all the money that's accumulated within a district must be spent in that district. And we're going to try to hold their feet to the fire on that. So if we're concerned community members, and we're concerned about our pocketbooks as well, we need to push back. Once a year, the city will take every one of these assessment districts, and they'll put an item on a consent calendar, and they'll say, these are the new assessments for this year. And it might be the maximum assessment, or it might be a little less. Normally it is the maximum assessment. And the question is, do they really need it to provide the service? Because if they don't need it to provide the service legally, they're not supposed to use it somewhere else. This is not a revenue generating system that allows them to do other things with the money. So one of the things that I did when I started looking, I'll blow this up for you a little bit. This is actually throughout this whole process. This is the book of paper that I accumulated going through all of the different city council agenda items, staff reports, and engineers reports. So the first thing I went to, I said, I don't understand this. I know, I'll go to the engineers report. And this happens to be page 15 out of the current 2018-19 engineers report with some annotated notes that I put on it. And what it does is it tells you that there's something called Levy A, and Levy A raises $460,000. And there's Levy B, which raises $2.6 million. Now, these two levies are actually separate assessments. They are separate districts, but they bundled them together, right? It looks like they're managing them together. They've added it. They're not telling you what is being spent on one and what is being spent on the other. And then there's this little thing over here on the other side that says ad valorem of $2.8 million. So at first, this kind of was a little bit confusing as to what's going on here. Now, if you look down a little bit farther, you can see that they're telling you the operation and maintenance costs. And that's the operation and maintenance cost of all the streetlights. Now, these are two separate districts. They should be divided up. We should know what's being spent in one, what's being spent in the other, but instead they're being muddled together. But even though they're muddled together, it says we're going to spend about $3.5 million from the Levy A, Levy B assessment. I'm going to spend $1.4 million from the ad valorem tax that we're getting, which means the cost of maintaining a streetlights today is $4.9 million. $4.9 million. But they're collecting $5.8 million. What? Well, they're doing it, right? I mean, this is almost like, what can I get away with? Okay, and we're going to go through, before the next council meeting, I'm going to go through every one of the engineers' reports online, and I'm going to see how much more they've collected than what they need, and then at the end I'm going to say, where's the money? Right? So then I looked in here, and I didn't understand it at first. The first article I wrote, I didn't understand. It says here, you're spending $8.9 million for streetlight purchases, and you're transferring out $4.5 million from the levies to the ad valorem information. And then you're transferring out $500,000 from the other one, and you're putting it back in. It looked all kinds of convoluted. I didn't understand it at all. Well, the reason why I didn't understand it is because inserted in this is the fact that they borrowed $15 million. And I'll tell you when they did it. They borrowed that money with lease revenue bonds, assuming that they're going to have this revenue stream coming in, where they had an extra $1 million. Well, they thought, well, you know what, we can pay for the interest on this. And they were going to go out and they were going to start buying the streetlights, which they are, by the way, already doing. And one of the questions I asked the city is, I said, oh, why are you transferring out $4.5 million? And they said, well, that's because we borrowed it from the other part of the district. And you can see here, they told me, look, we're only transferring in $4.44 million, and that happens to be the number. That's an interesting number because you're going to see in a minute, that's the number that they used to enable a contract with a company called Tanco to convert the streetlights to LEDs. And I said, well, that's really nice. Now, what happened to the other 60? You know, you said you transferred out 4.5, and you said you needed 4.4. Where's the rest of the money? Interesting. We're still asking that question. So I want to show you that this is a game. And it's a game because this all started on May the 23rd, 2017. Here, if anybody was at that city council meeting at the end of December, where they were going, oh, I don't know about this. This is really strange. I don't know what's going on. Lorraine West says, I got this letter in my mailbox too. I have no idea what this is all about. Well, I got to tell you what. It's been in front of them starting May the 23rd, 2017. And when they did it, you know, just to be cute, you can see here on 2016 that the streetlight district and the landscape maintenance district were two separate documents, right? But on 2017, they put them on one document. Now, I don't have any problem with that because if you look at it, they have two lighting districts and 60 LMDs. And if you've ever read one of these engineers' reports and you were able to stay awake through the whole thing, you'll find out that the majority of it is boilerplate. So why have boilerplate repeated 60 times? You can put them all in one document. But putting them in one document does not make them one district. Okay? And if you looked at what happened, it's exactly what the city said. You know, it's amazing. So on May the 23rd, 2017, agenda item 15 approved the purchase of 16,125 streetlights at a projected cost of $9.6 million. And then they were going to purchase and convert them to LEDs to reduce the cost of electricity by $8.85 per streetlight per month, or $22 million over 30 years. So they're going to save $22 million. And the approval allowed the city to enter into that sale without knowing how they're going to pay for it. They said, the staff said, we'll come back later and we'll tell you how we're going to pay for this. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never made any large purchase without knowing how I was going to pay for it, right? And if you really think they didn't know, well, that's another question. But in this agenda item, Darren Segmiller was at the time the special districts manager. He said, right in it, he says, yeah, we're combining these into a single report, but they are separate districts and they will be managed separately. But it's not the case. Then on September the 27th of 2017, the staff sent out an RFP for streetlight services for the LED conversion, even though they had no idea how they were going to pay for it yet, right? And so I thought that was amazing. And then right in January the 23rd, 2018, agenda item 11, they put before the city council a contract with Tanco Lighting, not to exceed, there's that number, $4,444,513. So that's where what they needed that money from. And they said, we're going to fund it by borrowing it from Fund 354. 354 is the ad valorem tax fund, which they are now, they've now divided this into an ad valorem tax fund, and then they put the levies together, right? But that's not the way it works. That's not the way it started out. So, then they said, you know what, we're going to return that money when the city council, give us permanent financing. So that's where the money now shifted. Remember that this is the transfer in, transfer out thing. It's almost like you guys have been associated. You've gone to a carnival, and remember the shell game, and they're so you find a P because it's going to move from place to place. February the 27th, 2018, agenda item 6. The council approved the use of revenue bonds not to exceed $17 million to finance the streetlight purchase and conversion. So finally, they brought it in front of the council and said, here's how we're going to do this. You're going to come out with a bunch of bonds. The total payment amount calculated of the final maturity of the bonds is estimated to be $25.6 million. So when you pay it back and you pay all the interest, you pay back $25.6 million to save $22 million. Yes.
Did they in the staff report explain any of that?
Yes.
They said it was going to come back, it was going to be more expensive.
Everything that you're seeing here comes out of the staff report. So when the original staff report on May the 23rd, did the projection of $22.5 million savings over 30 years. The February 27, 2018 staff report is the one that tells you the payback the principal and interest is going to be $25.6 million.
Okay, did they still have the $22 million someplace in the staff report?
Do they still have the what?
When they did this, I mean, I'll go back and read this because I'm curious too, and I appreciate all the work you've done on this. But
I have the staff report with me, and after this is over,
I was just wondering if. Okay, so they say the total payment to the final maturity of the bonds is estimated at $25.6 million, and we're going to only save $22 million. Was that in there? Was it $22 million?
$22.5 million was in the February 20. It was in the what was it? Not February 23rd. It was in the May 23rd.
Right. Well, this is I fault staff on this because you're asking people to remember what happened 8 months previously, and that's pretty tough when you have all these big packets. So it's almost like, who was responsible for this? Was it Striplin? Who was doing this stuff?
Hey, look, ultimately,
it's the
Ken
city council
Striplin is responsible for the whole thing. He owns the group.
Right. But what I'm a little disgusted about is, it's somebody should go to them and say, your city manager should have told you what was happening here, and they didn't. Which actually, obviously, someone got the city council was pretty upset because they rescinded the tax. But I fault the city manager for this because it's really difficult to follow this stuff if it's not all in the agenda before.
Well, okay. I all I can tell you is this. All right. I spent my career as a department manager. If I found out that my staff hid something from me like this, I would be in their office pounding on their desk. They probably wouldn't be there the next day. Okay? So if Ken Striplin had to know what was going on,
right.
And if the council didn't know what was going on, the way I found this was every time that someone would give me an answer, or I would read something, it would give me another date. And I could just sit there and I just walked this back. That's what all this paper is. I just walked it back, picked out all of these agenda items and staff reports, and you could piece it all together. If I could do it without even asking a staff member, well, If the council didn't know, we need a new council. Well, we need a new council anyway.
We need a new city manager.
All right.
I agree. We should have had you on the council, Al.
On November the 13th, 2018, Agenda Item 8, approved the staff initiating the Proposition 218 election process. Now, it's really crazy because I saw Tenoyan get up there and say, well, we're doing this with one vote because this is one district. Well, if it was one district, everybody in the district should have got a ballot, right? Well, but everybody in the district didn't get a ballot. Only the parts of the district that were changing. Well, it's not parts of the district. They are each one, and they changed terminology. So if you read the stuff that talks about Proposition 218, I hate when they do this. And I think they do it on purpose. You look at this thing and you say, okay, Proposition 218 allows you to form special benefit districts. And they call their engineers report a district, and then they change the name of the districts to zones. So if you come and you say, well, wait a minute, that's not one district. Well, it is one district, but it's got a lot of zones. Well, a zone has the same requirements as a special benefit district, because it is a special benefit district. And when we start talking about how the funding came about, why some people are paying $12 and some people are paying $81, oh, wait till you hear that. It's just miraculous. So anyway, the direction included removing the maintenance cost of 13 parks from the LMDs and moving the cost to the general fund. Well, that's what it said in this. I used that terminology because that's what it said in the staff report. But that's not what it said in the piece of information that you got. It said the cost was being moved to a special district. And I asked the question, what special district? And I never did get an answer, but we're going to keep asking. And remember that whenever you hear somebody say, okay, well, the district maximum fee is $81.71, that is the maximum they can charge. They don't have to charge that much. They could charge less. So every one of these 13 parks, well, wait a minute, why is this a vote? You don't need to vote on this. You could just go to the council and say, council, these 13 districts are being overcharged. We're going to reduce the cost. But that's not what they did. They're playing games with it. So starting with the first information letter, the information was deceptive. If you remember what it said, marking the ballot with a yes will indicate you support maintaining a streetlight service in your neighborhood, and marking the ballot no will indicate you're opposed. So what does this mean? Voting no means they're going to turn the streetlights out? No, it doesn't. Come on, you know that, right? It has nothing. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And then when you got your apology letter this time, it tells you that that the streetlights are going to be fine. Well, the streetlights are always going to be fine. So, and then he said, "Oh, this ad valorem tax is a subsidy. I mean, it's making up the difference because some of you aren't paying enough, and we got to balance this all out." Well, is that what really happened? No. Here's what really happened. And by the way, you don't have to believe me. You can go on the city website, and it's much easier to read the 2007 engineer's report because the people that wrote it then wrote it in more plain English than the ones that write the new ones. And it tells you this story. And what the story is this. You'll never believe it. I mean, it's amazing. Did you realize that there were streetlights in Santa Clarita before the city was a city? Isn't that amazing? And how do you think they paid for them? Well, they formed a special benefit district, which was called CMLD 1867. Okay? And it was originally established by the county. And it was funded by a combination of ad valorem property tax and a $12.38 assessment. So right from the beginning, right from the very beginning, it was planned that way. Okay, now, let me ask you another question. Where does the ad valorem property tax come from? I mean, doesn't that come out of our tax bill as well?
Yes.
It's just a different section. Remember, when you look at your property tax bill, you have three sections. You have the ad valorem part, which is the 1% of your value. You have the voted indebtedness, and then you have special benefit districts. So in today's terms, this part, this District 2, oh, and by the way, I love it when they do this. It was the first one formed. So naturally, when the county turned it over to the city, they called it District 2. Okay? And then the city called it Levy A. Right? But then they called it Zone 2. So when it's almost like no matter which question you ask, they can say no, and they come up with new terminology. But anyway, it raises $3.3 million a year. District 1, or Levy B, was called LLA-1. This is after the city became a city. When the city became a city, the county said, okay, from now on, all the new streetlights that you put up and all the ones you annex in, okay, are on you. And they formed another special benefit district, which actually encompasses the borders of the city of Santa Clarita, less that old district, which is in the middle. And they said, you are going to pay for it, and we're not going to give you any ad valorem property tax. So then the city had to continually raising their amounts. And you know what? They didn't care at the beginning. If you look at the 2007 report, you'll see that the District 1 was a very small amount. It didn't grow until they started annexing all this stuff in. Okay? And so at $81.71 per equivalent development unit, I love it. The city says everybody pays the same amount in a district. Wrong. Everybody pays a weighted amount dependent upon their property type. So if you have a single-family dwelling, which is considered one equivalent development unit, you pay $81.71. But if you're in an apartment, or if you're in a condominium, or if you're in a mobile home, or if you're in something else, you pay a smaller amount. So everybody does not pay the same amount. But that's here and there. And they're going to raise $2.6 million this year. So the old district that has the smaller assessment raises more money. Isn't that amazing? Okay. Combined districts will raise $5.9 million. We saw that in the engineer's report. And will pay out in operation and maintenance costs $4.8 million. And I also wonder, when I look at some of these things, is the amount of extra management that the city charges to oversee this thing, because they don't do any work. All they do is contract it out to Edison. So I don't understand it.
Al, why did some people get tax bills and other people didn't?
What?
Why did some people get some of these bills and other people didn't? I don't understand that.
Why did some get the tax bill? Because what they did was, it's simple. If they wanted to raise your taxes, or they came up with an idea that they were going to give you a reduction, you got a bill. You got a ballot. But if you were not going to get an increase, like in the LLA-1 or District 1, or you were in an LMD that was not going to get a reduction, you didn't get one. So what they were trying to do was salt this so that you got more votes that were people getting a reduction. And then, of course, there's the question of, what about developers? And we'll talk about that in a minute, too. So the money transferred out pays back the Tanco project cost. And then I asked him, I said, what happened to the remaining $58,900 that you didn't account for? Where'd that go? Okay. And why? So you transferred out that money this way, and then you took $464,000 and you transferred it back in the other direction. What are you doing? I don't understand it. Anyway, they claimed the savings would pay down the bonds. Well, we know over time that's not quite true. But in the city will pass, I love this. It says it right in, I took this right out of it. The city to pass along savings by reducing the streetlight assessment inequally among all property owners. That is in really bad English because it's exactly what it says. All right? But there's no savings to knock down. Well, there might be 32 years from now. Okay. Now, we ask the question. People ask the question, what about developers? Typically, in this kind of an assessment, developers are allowed to vote based upon the number of units that they are entitled to build, even though they haven't built them yet. But they don't have to pay the assessment until the units are built. So we ask the question, hey, what about developers? Are you going to do that again? Are you going? And by the way, I don't know if I put this in here. In the staff report, you can tell they went out to Vista Canyon Ranch and negotiated with them. It says it right in the staff report. It says Vista Canyon Ranch wants to increase the size of their landscape maintenance district, and so obviously they're going to vote yes. Okay, because they don't pay. All right, but it's a benefit to them. So it says no pending development project have been included in this ballot process. That's what Lujan said when she answered my column in the Gazette. But that's not what she said when they interviewed her 2 weeks before. And so what I did was I fed back the quotes that they had from 2 weeks before, where she turned around and she did say exactly that. She says, well, it appears that developers get to vote for as many pieces of property that they are going to develop. Well, that's not. So it is true that two things would happen. People would be getting a reduction. They counted on the people getting a reduction, voting yes, and they anticipated that all the developers would vote yes. And I got to tell you what. Now Vista Canyon is the one they mentioned in the staff report, but I'll bet they went to the San Canyon Plaza as well, and they went to Tom Clark and said, "Hey, Tom, we want you to vote yes on this." And Tom would turn around and say, "Well, okay," because they're not going to charge him anything. But at the same time, and if he said no, if he thought, well, that's not a fair thing, well, he's not going to say no because they'll take it out on him. It's just a situation where they have that ability. So then this was some LMZ zones finance local park with, and this I still don't understand. I finally got when I wrote the first one and Lujan wrote these supposed corrections and it said, call me, I'll give you answers. So I called her, but she didn't have any answers. So I've been waiting for her to get back with me. Well, today, and so Monday I said, you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm going to go to the council, I'm going to open my mouth again. I'm going to call her every day until she calls me. So I called her on Monday, called her on Tuesday, called her today. She actually called me back, left me a voicemail, and said, I'll be happy to answer your questions if you'll just send me an email and tell me what they are. Didn't we do this already? But that's okay. It's okay. We'll take care of it. Anyway, some LMD zones finance local park maintenance with funds from the LMD assessment and their property tax. How does that work? Right? This two-tiered funding creates an inequity. Well, if it really was an inequity and they were paying for it twice, then you could just eliminate it. Right? You wouldn't have to move it. So we're going to ask that question for them to explain what they meant. The city canceled the bond process. However, there are many open issues to address. The revenue bonds remain in place, and you can tell here they said this is going to do nothing to us to stop us from purchasing the streetlights. Right? That's what it said right in here. Okay. Well, did you vote to add that indebtedness to your district? They may turn around and say that they didn't have to vote, because when I went back, and I looked at the county stuff. It said the county discussion about the old streetlight district said part of it gave the ability to purchase equipment. I'm sure they didn't mean to purchase everything, but they may be hanging their hat on that. We'll see. I'm going to ask the question. The Tanco contract is still in force, and we can expect them to start working. But they haven't made any corrections to the engineer's report. The engineer's report this year was written as if that item passed. And it didn't pass. Because right on the back of that original ballot, what did it say? It said, if you vote yes, we're going to combine the two lighting districts. So they knew all the time there were two lighting districts, not one. Okay? And the LMD reductions hadn't been addressed. So that's and I love it. They say, you know what? The problem is you just don't understand. We're going to need to clarify this for you. Right? We need to have more outreach so that people truly understand what's going on. Right? I don't believe it. It's just crazy. So anyway, the staff combined the data in one engineer's report and then claimed in one place that it made it into one district, but it does not. Every single one of those zones is a separate special benefit district, has unique requirements for what the zone funds, and also if you're going to change things, every one of those should have their own individual ballot. So, well, that's what I just said. And we can't allow staff to get away with subverting Proposition 218, because if we do, you might as well open your pocketbook, because they're just going to continue to do this over and over again. Now, we got this fine letter. I got it this morning, and but it does say here, they underlined it. You probably can't read it from back there. All assessments proposed for modification will remain unchanged. I'm going to council at the next council meeting saying, hey, if you really believe that you're overcharging this other group of people, reduce it. Okay? And then they had some questions. They were going to give us some information. Why is the city terminating the assessment ballot proceedings? The city has received considerable feedback. I bet they have. Indicating that additional outreach, discussion, and input is necessary to understand the proposed assessment ballot proceeding. No, we don't need to understand it. We need you to fix it and do it the right way. That's what we need. In consideration of this feedback, City Council took the action on January the 8th to terminate the proceedings and cancel the public hearing. Will there be a public hearing on January 22nd? No. Will the city consider modifying the streetlight assessments in the future? Over the next year, the city will undertake community outreach and public input to engage property owners affected by any potential modification to the street lighting assessment. Based on that process and the input we receive, we will determine how to proceed in the future. We're going to have to keep giving them a lot of really good input. How does this action affect the amount of my assessment for lighting and landscaping? Doesn't change it. But here you see they do say this. The current maximum annual assessment rates for lighting and landscaping among all property owners who receive ballots will remain unchanged. It is the maximum assessment rate. Will this decision affect the overall streetlight service in the community? Fear not. Your streetlights are going to stay on. Will this action affect the city's decision to purchase the streetlight system? No. The city will acquire the streetlight system from Edison in phases early, and the city assumes ownership of the streetlights and poles from Edison. By the way, in the original staff report, you might have wondered, why are we doing this? I mean, why would the city be so anxious to do this? Well, it talked about that there was a substantial number of streetlight poles. I'm trying to remember exactly the number, where they had good potential to be leased out to communications companies. I heard a groan. That means cell towers and antennas. Okay. The city anticipates requiring converting. It doesn't say anything about how they're going to pay for it. Will this action affect future service levels for streetlight maintenance? Of course it won't. They already have enough money. It's all nonsense. So this is an issue that needs to be fixed, and it's not over. And we need to keep hammering on them until we get a good answer. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
When this comes up again, if they're going to use the income from Wi-Fi towers on the street lamp, they should be deducting that from what.
Well, you would think so.
They should be deducting that from what they charge us.
You would think so.
They're only supposed to charge us what it costs. They're not supposed to be making money on this stuff.
Right, but by the way, I just want you to understand something else. Currently, how does the city finance traffic lights? Doesn't that come out of bridge? Huh?
It seems to be writing a lot of traffic tickets out here.
Well, that's not how they finance new traffic lights, but
It's supposed to be by the developers.
I want you to understand that street lights include traffic lights.
Oh, so that'll be transferred to the developers won't have to pay for their traffic lights anymore?
I don't know.
Because they're supposed to pay for their traffic lights.
You know what? This is a situation. It very much appears like a situation where they're going to do whatever they can get away with, and it's up to us to make sure they don't get away with it. So that's yes, ma'am.
I don't want to change the subject, but what is happening with the solar panels?
That's a good question, and I am going to be asking that question next Tuesday night as well. Okay, because supposedly the the city was litigating against the solar panel, and I haven't heard a thing about it since. Right, and now I thought it was. If you've been following this in the paper, I can't believe it. They turn around and they say Edison says, "Well, everything is good up until we get to their box, and then their stuff is faulty." And then the property owners say, "Well, we called our electrician. He's a licensed electrician, but he broke it." And then they said, "Well, we think it's underground wiring, and so we're hiring an underground company, and we'll probably have enough generators to supply with electricity by Thursday." You know, I worked in a big aerospace company in Woodland Hills. We had a fair number of buildings, a lot of people, and power. Every now and then, you know, we've had power failures in the area. It only took 4 hours to get generators there big enough to power the whole facility. Right, and the idea that when did the power go out? Did it go out 5 days ago?
Yeah, they had like 4 days of without power.
4 days ago? So it goes out 4 days ago, and Thursday is tomorrow, right? So we're going to have 5 days to get somebody to bring generators out there? They must be trying to buy them from Joe's generator service. I don't know.
Special German, China.
So we will ask that question.
And
Watch the council meeting. I'm going to be asking the question at LMDs, and I'm going to be asking that question as well.